we've ended up in a world where we've spent the last decade and a half or so talking about the evils of straight white men, and then we suddenly got upset when they revolted.
Welcome back to Fishing Without Bait, a lifetime without definitive expectations. We're going to continue our conversation with Chris Maverick. I deal with a lot of people who also view a lot of social media, Mav, and they compare themselves. They spend a lot of time comparing, this person has this person has that, this person has this, I don't. And all these influencers, I think it's filtered reality. Could you talk to us about that?
I think people think about social media in a weird way because it is something that we all have. We treat it like it's real life, when in reality it is mostly an entertainment media. It's a broadcast medium, right? In the old days, we had real people, and we had people who were rich enough to be on television, right? Like you could like you never expected that you were going to interact with a Brad Pitt or a Tom Cruise or an Angelina Jolie or Denzel Washington. These are people who exist in movie world. I turn on the A Team and that's the people. But now in 2025, you know, not only can I interact directly with an influencer? I'm trying to think. Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast is a millionaire, maybe even a billionaire. He's ridiculously wealthy. He's a very, very rich individual. Logan Paul, very rich individuals. Not only can you have a very real chance of interacting with them if you were to yell at them on Twitter or YouTube or whatever, but also because they're just using a technology that you have the same access to. The barrier to entry is minimal for you to post to Twitter or post to YouTube. So it feels like, hey, I can do this, and therefore they must be real people. But they're not. I mean, they are real people, but they're performing in the same way that I was performing when we talked about wrestling.
Yes.
Mr. Beast is a character portrayed by Jimmy Donaldson, I think is his real name or whatever his name is. But even Logan Paul is a character portrayed by Logan Paul. And sure, he has aspects of his real life in there, but Arnold Schwarzenegger has aspects of his real life when he portrays a character as well. And people lose the understanding that it is very, very filtered, right? If I was in a wrestling ring, I'm not going to start talking to you about my day-to-day problems. That's why that guy didn't know that I bought eggs, right? I'm talking to you about the problems of me feuding with the Gambino brothers or whatever, right? I'm talking to you about that's what I'm talking to you about. Like just the very directed, very very manipulated, very mediated fictional reality. And I think that's what social media is too, right? So if you follow me on social media, what do you know about me? You know a little bit about me teaching, because I talk about that a little bit. You know my political points of view, and you know that I have a podcast and that I like building Legos. That's my life on social media, right? You don't know if I'm having a good or a bad day. You don't know if I have a fight with my wife, I'm not going to post about that. If we get into an argument, it's not like we're going to be like we argued over the toilet seat or whatever, like regular people problems, right? That happens.
Yes, it does.
Right, but that's not going to be that's not my social media persona. My social media persona is guy who teaches classes, guy who has opinions about politics, and guy who builds Legos. That's like what I talk about, and so it becomes it. I'm not the most interesting person on social media, but even if my social media persona becomes hot girl who goes on vacation, right? Like that is a travel influencers are often that, right?
Yes.
That woman she has a real life where she has to deal with stuff like paying bills, where she has to deal with relationship problems. Maybe she has a complicated relationship with her mother or whatever, right? I don't know, but it's never going to show up there. And
That's
you also
correct.
don't know how, for every picture that you see on Instagram of, Susie the media influencer, where she looks like she just wandered out of the centerfold in Sports Illustrated, you have to understand that in order to get that one picture, she took 2,000 of them, and you're seeing the one that she looks amazing in, right? So that becomes the performance. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We were just talking about how important entertainment is for escapism. The problem is when you confuse that escapism with reality and then don't realize that since you always live in your own reality, you can't escape from it, right?
That's
Like,
exactly correct, Mav.
right. So I can make. I mean, I'm all for people being on social media. I love that. I love the I love that I can go and yell into the void about hating Trump, and sometimes people interact with me, right? Like, I have a lot of posts where I'm just like, this idiot is going to be president again, whatever. Um, but but like, that's not my every thought. It's just what you would think if you like were reading Twitter or Blue Sky or whatever, right? Like, you'd think that I never talk about anything else, where in reality, a lot of my day to day conversation is about stupid TV shows my wife and I are watching that we're never going to post about, right? That becomes regular life. Or also, in all seriousness, like, I mean, I made the comment about just the dumb arguments people have. I think that people don't realize. I think that people don't realize how much every married couple argues about the worst, most stupid things ever. like who used the last of the toothpaste, and then why, and then therefore why didn't you go replace it? Because clearly you knew that we were out of toothpaste and you should have bought some more. That's a conversation my wife and I have had. I don't know. 2 billion times over the last 20 years, and I'm betting you did too, right? And I'm betting every married couple listening to this right now, be they straight or gay, be they not even married couples. If you just live with somebody, maybe you're not even a couple. Maybe you're just like, just like living with a roommate that you've been with for a while. Everyone has had this stupid toothpaste argument, and it always feels like you're the only one because it's not the kind of thing that shows up. It's not a glamorous thing that people are going to talk about in social media. Glamorous good or glamorous bad, right? It's just a human thing that is likely to ruin your marriage because you feel like the Joneses don't argue about toothpaste. They don't argue about toilet seats. Of course they do. Everybody does. And that's kind of where I think social media becomes a problem. There's a book on one of these shelves here called Remediation that talks about the way in which we've always mediated things. We've always mediated things. We've always seen the world through the way media portrays it. So we look at things like, in the 50s, there were a lot of people saying, well, why isn't my family like the Cleavers? Why aren't, like, Leave It to Beaver? Their world's perfect, and my family, we don't solve all of our problems with a hug. And it's like, yeah, because they are television characters. And I think that people forget that social media is still a character, because we all just kind of put our best foot forward. And the only difference between what we're doing on Twitter or Facebook or Blue Sky or whatever, and what was happening on Leave It to Beaver, is scale. And I don't have a producer. I have me. I have me telling you what my life is like, or what I want you to believe my life is like.
Well, as a
You know,
therapist, what I try to do is help people figure out what's important, Mav. And I explain to them that mindfulness isn't going over to Thailand and sitting in a temple on a satin pillow going, all day. It's paying attention on purpose and finding out that words mean something, and to help people be more present in their lives. And they'll find out that whether they put the cap back on the toothpaste really is the smallest of matters.
If someone wants to send me to Thailand, though, I will take the trip. I am accepting donations.
Well, people's perception are their reality. So I'm dealing with females, especially of all ages, that suffer from low self concept, low self esteem, identity formation,
Mhm,
and these images that are being reinforced today, particularly by this misogynistic type of like zeitgeist, this overwhelming of the mood of the present about women. And when I started to see these college boys on campuses going,
mhm.
"Your body, my choice," uh, these young ladies are very angry, and a lot of them are subdued, and they figure, is this what my life's going to be like?
Yeah, I'm just pulling as you're talking. I'm pulling all these books here from my shelf. These are my masculinities books, Gender and Power, Masculinities, Manhood in America. These are all. It's one of my subspecialties is talking about gender dynamics. And one of the things that, like, when I'm teaching gender theory, that I always try to explain to people is that because of the way we because of the way we talk about gender, and in fact, we often will have in college, we'll have a women's and gender studies department in a way that implies that there is only one gender and it is woman, and then the default of being a man is just not a gender. It's sort of, and it's not a default. It's just this weird way we sort of structure things, and we talk about terms like patriarchy as though this is the thing. Not understanding that from a sociological standpoint, if you're going to read books like these, patriarchy hurts men too. Um, so one issue that comes up a lot is gender dysphoria, or sorry, body dysphoria, um, dysmorphia,
Yes.
rather, and not dysphoria, body dysmorphia, where you, in particular for young women, might compare themselves to the supermodels and that they see in movies and on television and on Instagram, and we tend to talk about this as, oh, and this is the thing that causes the bulimia and the anorexia epidemics in America, um, and we talk about it like it's a girl problem, and so people miss that this happens with boys and with non-binary people. But boys especially, because if you are queer in any way, shape, or form, you end up with people understanding, well, either people rejecting you wholeheartedly. That's obviously a problem where you're like, oh, there are no trans people. Those people, whatever, so you end up with those people, but also you end up with people who are understanding of issues that queer kids might have, and yet we make this mistake where we sort of have decided that, in particular, cis white straight males are just okay, and we're just not going to worry about them. And in fact, they tend to end up in problems because of this, because they don't know how to relate to the gender issues that we've put a lot of work into trying to teach all women and queer kids, and to a lesser extent, people of color. We tried to teach them ways of dealing with these issues in a way that we just sort of leave white guys out. So you end up with people gravitating to someone like an Andrew Tate, or the brosphere and the manosphere,
Yes.
that has sort of developing, because you suddenly have a world where, after, this is going to sound really weird. Now I'm talking from an academic point of view here. I am not disparaging anybody who's about to feel very disparaged. We've ended up in a world where we've spent the last decade and a half or so talking about the evils of straight white men, and then we suddenly got upset when they revolted. um, which is a problem. Which is not to say that whiteness is necessarily better, manness is better. It's that if you have spent enough time sort of saying, "Oh, well, we're only going to care about people of color, and we're only going to care about women, and we're only going to care about queer kids," suddenly someone who feels powerless, because everyone feels powerless, because everyone has the toothpaste problem we were talking about. Everyone feels powerless, and they've not had anyone speak to their needs ever. And then um, you have a Joe Rogan, you have a Andrew Tate, who's worse than Rogan. You have Ben Shapiro, Trump. Even you have somebody come along and say, "I feel your pain. I'm here for you." Then of course they're going to go there
Yes,
because
they do.
they need someone out there who is listening. Now, I'm not saying, hey, we need to coddle to the incels. Like that's not my message here. My message is that incels, to use that term, are people who are affected by patriarchal structures of gender and power in America, and we should probably pay attention to it instead of just like waving them off and saying, "Oh, you'll be all right," which is like sort of an inclination to make them the butts of jokes rather than to understand it as a concept. Which is why I have books like these with all these little tags in them as I'm working on things. That's a big part of what my dissertation was, like how I got a PhD, was writing about why superhero narratives appeal to people because of 13-year-old boyhood power fantasies that are wrapped up in the concept of being a superhero. And it would be great if there was value in that. And I think sometimes there is, like there's a way you can tell that story, and you can make that story Spider-Man. And then there's a way you can tell that story and you can make that story Andrew Tate. And I would argue Spider-Man's better, but but we need to actually be aware of it in order to work towards those things.
People's perception are their realities.
Mhm.
People's perceptions are their realities. And the last campaign was based on fear that something's going to be taken away from you, or something that is, you're not going to get something that you truly deserve.
I think that the mistake is being dismissive of it, right? The, one of the things people say is, well, they have nothing to be afraid of. No, they do have something to be afraid of.
Yes,
If someone is used to getting their way, if they're used to a position of power based solely on the genetic privilege of being born with a certain chromosomal makeup and a certain that makes you male and makes your skin the right shade of pale, um, and they're used to that positioning them somewhere, and then you're suddenly saying, "Hey, wouldn't it be great if there were equality between genders and races?" Well, no, not if I'm on top. Like that might
that's
not be
correct.
great. So it is a natural response it is a natural response to go, wait a minute, I something is being taken away from me. Now, the right way of fixing this is perhaps to say, rather than thinking of this as something being taken away from you, think of this as, is there a way for everyone to win? Back when I had corporate jobs, we used to talk about, win-win synergy, and is there a way to do this? And I think there are, but I don't think we always approach it that way. And I think that it's
There's always compromise, Mav.
yeah, yeah,
Always.
and
There's
there,
always a way to compromise.
one would hope. I mean, or or we're doomed as a people, and I don't mean we like Americans. I mean like humans, right? Like if there's not going to be compromise, then the world ends, and I don't want that. So one would hope that we can work for the betterment of everybody.
Well, here's what I tell people. A lot of times I'll begin by just asking even random strangers, what's good about being you? And
Mm.
I don't think you'd be surprised how many people have no answer to that at all. And then I'll ask them, I'll say, do you know the difference between right and wrong? Do you have a moral compass? Can you be dependable? Can you be honest? And do you treat people with courtesy and respect? And I tell them, I says, those are the 5 greatest attributes that a human being could have. And if you can answer yes to all of them, be proud of yourself. That's who you are.
Can anybody actually answer yes to all of them? I mean, I guess I can answer them all aspirationally. It's like, oh my god, yeah, am I proud of? I mean, I try, but I don't know that I have.
Well, I'll say, are you capable of being dependable?
Yeah,
Are you
yeah.
capable of being honest?
I hope so. I hope so. Yes, I hope I'm capable of
Well,
those
that's something
things.
to strive for. It's not like I drive a Tesla or I drive a Ferrari or I'm this or I'm that or I'm that. There's no prize for being the richest person in the cemetery, Mav.
Yeah, yeah. You get a nice looking tombstone, I guess, but like, what good is it doing you?
Be sure to join us next week as we continue our conversation with our engrossing guest, Chris Maverick. And as a free gift, we offer a free prescription. Fruits, nuts, and vegetables. Unplug your television and take up fishing. And for a truly mindful experience, we suggest that you fish without bait. Do a kindness for yourself and do a kindness for another. Forgive yourself and forgive another. Till all are free, none are free. Namaste, my friends.
Please check out our website at fishingwithoutbait.com, where you can listen to the show, comment on our discussions, and find out where you can subscribe to our podcast. If you're interested in flying the colors of Fishing Without Bait, click the shop icon on our website. We have clothing, mugs, cell phone cases, and so much more. Show the world that you fish without bait. This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.